Hello, everybody online, and those of you who are here in the building. I want to welcome you to our Tuesday night Torah class. And so let's open up with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your word that guides us and leads us. We pray you give us ears to hear and eyes to see and understanding and wisdom into your word as we read tonight and talk. And we just thank you so much for all these things in Yahushua's name. Amen. Okay. So last week we ended Numbers 15, ended in verse 31 about the unintentional sins. Before we proceed, does anybody have any thoughts from last week? If not, we can go on to the next section. We'll read verse 32 through 36. Does anybody like to read? You would like to read? You like to read a lot.
Okay, Numbers chapter 15, verse 32. And while the children of Yasharel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Shabbat. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto El Moshe and El Aharon and unto all the assembly, and they put him in ward, because it was not declared what should be done to him. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, the man shall be surely put to death. All the assembly shall stone him with stones without the camp. And all the assembly brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died as Yahuwah commanded Moshe.
So we find this guy he's gathering sticks on the Shabbat, and so what do they do with this guy? Or somebody finds him, right? Somebody sees him out there. And so what do? Anybody? So they take the guy, they don't know what he's doing, then they don't really know what to do, right? So they just say, what did you say? They put him in ward? Is that what yours said? Oh, that's interesting. So basically, they take him to jail, right? And they don't really know what to do with the guy. So Moses goes before Yah, and but the people who found them, it seems like they did the right thing, do you think? Because they didn't really, make any judgment on their own, right? They didn't really know what to do, right? So they take him to Moses, and he's told, of course, the guy's got to be put to death. I mean, does that seem a little harsh, you think? That's a hypothetical. Huh? Or a rhetoric question, I guess.
It does sound very harsh. So we were thinking, Lisa and I, that it might be more of a heart issue, like something was going on that we weren't aware of.
Right. Such as he was just out collecting wood and for no reason, just out there collecting wood. And
I mean, I could read between the lines, but it would be speculation.
Yeah. So anyways, he's taken out and he's put to death. So you're right, there's probably more to the story. It doesn't really say, it just tells us basically, they took him in. And but one point of the story that I do like is that instead of basically taking the law into their own hands, they're taking it before the higher court, so to speak, and not making any judgment on their own. So, Kat?
I like what he said about a matter of the heart.
Right.
And the speculation might be something like they heard him say, I'm going to go ahead. Doesn't matter what God said. Or
Could have been, yeah.
I'll show them. Or he doesn't mean to that extent. I'm thinking of what people I've heard say similarly in this day and age.
Right.
So that would indicate, as he said, a matter of the heart, not so much a matter of the deed.
Yeah, maybe he was out there and they came across the guy and said, hey, you probably shouldn't be gathering wood today. And maybe he said, yeah, so what are you going to do about it? Lisa?
If you read a few verses after it, in verse 39, it says, and it shall be unto you, he's talking about the tzitzits, but later in the verse of 39, it says that ye seek not after your own heart and your own eyes. So based upon that, and also the verses prior, verse 30 through 31, they talk about despising the word of Yahuwah and how the commandment is broken. So maybe this is just an example of that type of person.
So in that context, it makes sense. Ralphie?
Yeah, the other thing, at least for me, I think that's one thing to maybe really consider, and it talks about the ZTO, but it's that last sentence. After you should not search after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you went whoring.
Right.
So it's emphasizing, I'm saying to me, his punishment, or let's say the judgment that's being handed down, why would the Father, he's not saying anything about the Sabbath day here.
Right.
I know it happens right after the Sabbath day, but possibly
Was he
on
out the Sabbath,
gathering?
wasn't it?
What's that?
It was on the Sabbath, wasn't it?
No, I understand that, but I'm just trying to, gathering sticks. Okay, come on, you don't get it. But I don't know. Something tells me, like you guys seem saying, there's maybe a little bit more. And could it be the wordings, especially when go after whoring after your own? And if you go back and you'll see how much that word, when the whoring pops up, it's usually associated with other deities and other behaviors to other gods. So I'm thinking, okay, why would he be gathering sticks on the Shabbat? I'm not, was he out setting up a little altar and doing other things where that became, punishment of death? I don't know. It's a thought.
Maybe he was serving another god. Okay, well, let's go on through 37 through 41. If somebody would like to read. If not, I could read. Oh, you want, Johnny?
Again, Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them to make tassels on the corner of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Yahuwah and do them, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined, and that you may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy for your Yah. I am Yahuwah your Yah, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Yah. I am Yahuwah your Yah.
Thank you. So it is interesting that this follows, the making of the tzitzits right after this incident. Now, I don't know that it was as a result of that, but this is obviously a command, and I think most of us here wear the tzitzit. And the tzitzit it has a cord of blue in it. So why do you suppose what is the significance of the blue? Anybody ever look into that? Because I don't really know myself. Pat?
The only thing I have heard is that in order to make it blue dye, they had to have the shells from the Dead Sea. And,
From the Dead Sea?
Right. That's what I thought. But anyway, and so for years, when they weren't able to get that, they quit using blue thread in that in Israel. And I don't know that that's necessarily true, but that's what I heard.
Huh.
And as far as why he asked them to use that, it's just to see if they were willing to go a little extra to go find the shells and make the dye in order to comply with what he's asked. Maybe a test.
Kurt?
This is just Google, though.
You Googled it?
The color reminds us of both the ocean sky, and the ocean and sky, and God's throne reminds us of this connection, and that's much to do about the Talmud and distinguishing color,
Mhm.
ocean and sky.
So we know there is a cord of blue, and if you look at your tzitzit, I think you'll see blue in it, right? And one thread, and maybe you have other colors in there too, but I just happen to like just white with the blue. So, Pat?
Someone who claims they've been to heaven and back again said that Yeshua's favorite color is blue.
That could be. You got something to say? Okay. Go ahead and say it.
I know we had this discussion before as far as our tzitzits, and I was I don't think the word is skeptical about it. I just didn't kind of see it in scripture.
Right.
Because I was focusing for many years on the New Testament. But I think with the encouragement from Lisa to read what it says, and also for encouragement and just the straightforwardness of Dan to kind of, call me out in conviction and truth. And also a big kind of like thanks to Beth for making my tzitzits and for
Yes.
Lisa's tzitzits also.
Thank you, Beth, if you're listening. 'Cause she made mine too. But when I first came to the Torah, I didn't even know what tzitzits were. I didn't even start wearing them right away. And I saw people wearing them, but I remember there was one, we must have been going over this passage one, I don't know if it was a Shabbat or probably a Shabbat. And then a big discussion broke out about tzitzits, and I was just sitting there, and I had no idea what people were talking about. And so then I learned what it was about. And so I looked up the word for the tzitzit, and this, from what I could tell, this passage is the only place these 3 times that particular word shows up. And they do mention in Deuteronomy tassels, but it's actually a different word. I was surprised about that. I think the word, I wrote it down, the word was, I think it's, look at my notes here, gedilim, which also means tassel, but I was kind of surprised it was actually a different word.
Mike?
Yes.
I always think it's important to remember when we come across this portion that the wording is, do this so that you who is
Right.
wearing them will remember it, the commandments. And it's easy for us to assume subconsciously the people are wearing them to show off or to make a statement or to identify themselves with other people that are doing it. That wasn't his intent.
Right. And that was the next point we were going to get to. the reason we wear the tzitzit, as you say, is for us personally to remember, not, as you say, like how big my tzitzits are, And so it says that it's for you to look at. So if you're, struggling in your flesh over anything really, I mean, you just like, sometimes I just like to, you just like look at it and hold it in your hand, and it's like a remembrance, like, oh yeah, okay. And so it helps us to remember that, you're to obey, not just wearing tzitzits, but the whole command. So thank you, Pat. And like was pointed out by Lisa and Pat and Ralphie about the heart issue, is kind of the next sentence kind of talks about going after your own heart in your own eyes, just doing what you want to do. And so maybe that's what that Sabbath breaker, maybe that's kind of what all that was about, So he's like, giving us something to help us remember. Okay, so anything else, Pat?
Well, I notice it says here, was this only for men? And I do know people who think
It is only for men?
If they're asked, the question is being asked in here, and I know people who believe that. So I was wondering what the discussion here might be about that subject. Why?
In Jerry's book there? Yeah.
Yeah, why do
Unfortunately, I don't have Jerry's book here.
That's okay. Why so many of the women in our congregation do wear them?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, is it, me personally, I think it's for anybody who wants to wear them, but why? Because everyone is required to follow the commands, whether you're a man or woman.
I have a comment. So if you look at the
we don't
verse
see you.
that you're looking at, that's all right. So if you look at the verse that you're looking at,
There he is.
it's the sons of men. Well, when you look over at the manna, whenever they're commanded to eat the manna, it says, "Tell the sons of Israel that they shall eat manna 6 days, and on the seventh day they shall gather twice as much." So the question is, if the phrase "sons of Israel" is in both places, are the women and the children dying of hunger because they're not eating the manna, or are they eating it too?
Yeah.
And so the point is, it's not just men that should be reminded about God's commands. It's everybody in the whole congregation. The phrase "sons of Israel" was a general phrase that represented the whole community.
Right. And they could also use the children of Israel, but. So any other thoughts? Ralphie, did you have a comment you wanted? Oh. Okay.
And I know in some of my research, I looked. You're talking about this word "zizit." The root of it, if I remember, goes back to the blossom that's on in the menorah. So there's a connection there, obviously, about bearing fruit. We can see that whole thing to remind you. But the blue cord, I was just thinking, it's interesting because that word blue, for most of Scripture where it pops up, it's an association with the temple or the tabernacle. So maybe there's a connection there as well, as far as you, in some sense, are a representation of that house, to remember the rules of the house, I guess, maybe. I don't know, just speculation.
The word for blue is Kalet. Kat?
I think it's important to me to recognize that it doesn't just say to remember the commandments. It says remember and do all of them.
Right. And to do them, yep.
I had a parting thought, Mike, on the
A burning thought?
harshness of the Sabbath breaker.
Okay.
In addition to a condition of the heart that he may have been suffering from, it also served Yahuwah a purpose to make an example of him,
Mm-hmm.
because if they had caused him to turn in 2 turtle doves and given him a good flogging, nobody would really much speak of it. But in this case, we speak of it
Right.
in perpetuity.
And yep. Yes, we're still speaking about it.
It makes it very memorable.
So it's definitely a serious matter for those of us who are following Torah. Now, I think that probably like something like this, because he was in the community, he should have been following the commands like everybody else. But, do you think that would apply to somebody outside, like the people in the nations? Pat, you're shaking your head. No, I would agree.
My reason for saying so, what?
Go ahead.
That's okay. I'll let you do that next. The reason is because he said these laws will be for you and those that sojourn with you.
Right.
That's all.
Yes, that's all. Yeah, those who choose to be a part.
And it's interesting, like right before what Pat's reading, and then right after that, it speaks of someone defiantly. So, and then it goes right into this gentleman as well, this happening. So my guess that's playing a lot of part in this person and who he is and within the act as well. A defiant act, maybe.
Lisa? Did you?
What Kurt was saying as far as to make an example, when you do, someone is stoned, it's a strong deterrent to not do it again. And obviously, and the second thing about getting back to the tzitzits, I did a word study or something on tassel, and then I think it also translates to wing, and also it kind of somehow, I can't articulate it completely, but the woman who was cured of her blood issue, she grabbed onto the tassel of Yahusha, and
usually it says the hem.
The hem.
But it was more than likely his tzitzit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the definition is a floral or wing-like projection. Let me see. For instance, a forelock of hair, tassel, fringe, or lock. So you could even be like, a lock of hair. But it's like, but it goes back to like what Ralphie was saying. It's a blossom or a flower. That kind of idea. So we can move on unless anybody has anything else. And the next section is pretty big. And this is another one of those, Kurt, what did you call it? A deterrent? Or whatever. So why don't we read, we'll just read 1 through, we go up through 11. Somebody wants to read. If not, I can read. Does anybody mind if I read? Or do you want to read?
Now Korah, the son of Ishhar, the son of Kohath, and the son of Levi, and Dathan, and Abiram, and son of Elab, on the son of Pelah, sons of Reuben, took men. They rose up from Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. And they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said unto them, Ye take too much upon yourselves, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them. and the Lord is among them. Wherefore, then lift ye up yourselves above the congregation of the Lord. And when Moses heard it, he fell upon his face, and he spake unto Korah and unto his company, saying, Even tomorrow the Lord will show you who are his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near unto him. Even him who he hath chosen will be caused to come near unto him. This do, take you censers, Korah, and all his company, and put fire therein, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord doth choose, he shall be holy. Ye take too much upon you sons of Levi. And Moses said unto Korah, Hear, I pray you, ye sons of Levi, seemeth it but a small thing unto you that God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister unto them. And he hath brought thee near to him, and all the brethren and the sons of Levi with thee, and seek ye the priesthood also, for which cause both thou and all thy company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron, that ye murmured against him?
Thank you. So these guys get this little coalition going, and they're going to stand up to Moses. And I don't know how far after the spy incident this is in actual time, but it really wasn't that long ago in the book of Numbers that we were talking about the spy incident. And so these guys are raising up. My Bible, this is an ESV, but in my version, Korah says, "You have gone too far." So he's like, he's like going after it. He's, that's a pretty stern thing to say to somebody who's in a position of leadership. Like, you're just going too far. We can't have this. This is unacceptable. So, and of course, Moses, he says he fell on his face. So, I mean, why do you think he did that? He was probably pretty hurt by these accusations, you think? I would think, yeah. But it's interesting also that this guy Korah, you look at his lineage, he's actually he's son of Ishar, son of Kohath, so he's actually what he would be like a cousin of Moses and Aaron, right? Like that, Kohath is his grandfather. Was that the grandfather of Moses? Or like great-grand, somewhere in there. So they're like first or second cousins even. Pat?
Not only would he be hurt himself personally, but from a previous incident of something similar, the Miriam getting leprosy over a similar thing.
Yeah.
At that time, there was very much an evidence of they should have been fearing Yahweh. So he might have not only been his own hurt, but the realization that this may totally upset our God.
Right.
And who knows what he'll do.
Yeah. I think one of the things, especially Paul was pointing out a lot when we went through, what's this Numbers? What was Leviticus? Numbers that we went for in Leviticus, because it's recognizing I think a lot of it will help if we understood who this person was. He actually had a service in serving in the tabernacle.
Because he was a Kohathite.
What's that?
He was a Kohathite.
Yeah, so, and it seems like his accusation was to basically saying, all these other guys got this job. I'm just as set apart as them.
Right.
And so it seems like they wanted more power or whatever the case might be. It was crazy because Moses even says, you already have this great
Right.
job.
Yeah, I think he says that later.
You know,
yeah.
it's like, you know, talking to your manager and saying, I'm just as good as you, manager. And it's the boss who makes the decision. So
Right.
ultimately, you know, that's who you're speaking about, you know?
So when I find it interesting that when Moses addressed them, he addressed them that he says, "You have gone too far, sons of Levi." So of the four, there's four main leaders. Only one of them's a Levite, but he's addressing them all like you sons of Levi. So that's down in verse 7.
If he said you've gone too far, implies to me possibly there's been other little incidents that preceded this.
Yeah.
He was also described as astute, clever, and ridiculously wealthy. So, I mean, in service to
Korah, you mean?
yeah, in service to the Mishkan, perhaps he was kind of like the Nancy Pelosi of his time.
Yeah.
Perhaps he had done too well in service to the Mishkan.
Yeah.
At least became haughty and, self-indulgent.
I don't know if you ever saw that movie, the Ten Commandments, but they had I remember the character Dathan in there, and he was like you say, he was like, he's riding in the chariot, and everyone's serving him, and he's just real arrogant. It was played by Edward G. Robinson too. That was an interesting part. Anyways, we can. Any other? So now Moses says, "All right, if that's the way you want it, we're gonna have a showdown. Basically, we're going to get your sensors ready, get your fire ready, and we'll see who the man is that Yahuwah chooses." So let's read on verse 12 through 15. I could read if you want. Or I'll just read one, yeah. And Moses said to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said, "We will not come up. It is a small thing that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must also make yourself a prince over us. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up." And Moses was very angry, and he said to Yahuwah, "Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, and I have not harmed one of them." So these guys, they say, "Hey, we're not going to do it." It's like very disrespectful, and it just makes Moses even more angry. But I find it interesting that they say, "You took us." They're coming out of Egypt. "You took us out of a land of milk and honey, and you haven't even brought us to the land of milk and honey that you said you were going to." Which I find interesting, because it wasn't because Moses wasn't going to take them there. It was because they were disobedient, and Yahuwah refused to take them there because, in their disobedience over the spy incident, they were not allowed to go into the land.
Moses didn't take them, they went voluntarily.
Oh, out of the land, you mean? Right. But he's saying, well, you took us. So, and I like how he says, I haven't even taken a donkey from these guys. I don't know what they're doing. Any other comments?
I It just seems to be human nature that you have to have somebody to blame your hardships and woes on.
Yeah.
And also ironical that, their quest for the land, and in the end, because of their defiance and walking contrary,
Yeah.
the land itself gobbled them up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of blame shifting going on here. Okay, we can continue reading verse. Oh, you had a comment?
Sorry, no, I was just looking. There's other things that's interesting here. Moses became very displeased. So I don't know. There's that whole thing. Moses was humble and everything, and I think that's maybe that perception that you can be humble, but you can get agitated and displeased and angry at this.
Mhm.
And I don't know. Maybe here Moses isn't in front of Yahuwah himself, but is saying it out loud. I have not taken anything from these men. Obviously,
Not even a donkey.
Yahuwah knows better, but so I don't know. It's just interesting to see. Moses is very agitated, I would
Yeah.
say here.
I would call that righteous anger.
We're told to be angry, but sin not.
Right.
And so
point.
the difference is we need to be angry at sin, not angry at somebody inconveniencing us.
Do you think he seems to be a little angry at these guys, though? But he's angry about the sin and just the situation that it brings up. Because let's face it, he's got a big responsibility. Moses does, and having these guys, forming their little coalition, and they had to get together. You're talking like 250. They recruited 250 people, and so there must have been some conspiring going on, to lead up to this situation. So, Kurt, did you have another? Oh, okay. Okay, somebody want to read 16 through 19?
And Moshe said unto Korah, Be you and all your company before Yahuwah, you and they and Aharon tomorrow, and take every man his censer and put incense in them, and bring ye before Yahuwah every man his censer, 250 censers, you also, and Aharon each of you his censer. And they took every man his censer and put fire in them, and laid incense thereon, and stood in the door of the tabernacle of the assembly with Moshe and Aharon. How far do you want?
Through 19.
And Korah gathered all the assembly against them unto the door of the tabernacle of the assembly, and the glory of Yahuwah appeared unto all the assembly.
So Moses is laying down the gauntlet. He says, tomorrow we're going to do this. Get your 250 censers, and, we're going to see. So it seems like, when it says the glory of Yahuwah appeared to the congregation, I think that would instill a little bit of fear in everybody. Is like, I don't know, if I was one of those 250, I might be having second thoughts right about now. Kurt?
So I know what a censor is in social media, but what are we talking about here?
Say that again?
I know what a censor is in social media, but what is a censor that they're talking about here?
I think it was one of those things that, like, I don't know how I grew up in the Catholic Church, so I'm
that's not
sorry.
helping.
One of those things. That's a censer. It has the incense in it. The fire.
Oh.
Big ashtray.
Yeah, an ashtray. You were a Catholic too, right? Yeah. So if you're a Catholic, you've kind of seen those things.
I'm interested in seeing that there was something done besides just do it because I said so. Parents sometimes have that order on their kids. Here they're having something shown besides just it's my word saying something has to be done. he's going to show us by an activity here
Mhm.
whose it is, and you won't be saying, well, Moses,
Right.
we don't want to listen to you. They're letting God speak this way.
Hey, bud, how you doing? Hey, I can't hear you. Good to see you, though. Okay, why don't we read Bud's on the Zoom here. Verse 20 through 24.
I will.
Did you want to read? Okay.
Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aharon, "Separate yourselves from the assembly so I can put an end to them at once." But Moshe and Aharon fell face down and cried out, "O Yahuwah, the Elohim, who gives breath to all living things, will you be angry with the entire assembly when only one man sins?" Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, "Say to the assembly, move away from the tents of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram." Moshe got up, went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. He warned the assembly, "Move back from the tents of these wicked men. Do not touch anything belonging to them, or you will be swept away because of all their sins." So they moved away from the tents of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram. Dathan, Abiram had come out and were standing with their wives and children and little ones at the entrances to their tents. Then Moshe said, "This is how you will know that Yahuwah has sent me to do all the things that it is not my idea. If these men die a natural death, suffer the fate of all mankind, then Yahuwah has not sent me. But if Yahuwah brings about something totally new, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them and everything that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the realm of the dead, then you will know that these men have treated Yahuwah with contempt."
Okay, thank you. So the congregation's a little fearful, right? They're thinking, well, what's going to happen to us? So Moses tells them, move away. I always get this picture in my mind, just people just like backing away, step away. But you ever do that with like somebody? I mean, you have like a friend, and they do something stupid, and you're just like, I don't know this guy. I'm moving away. Kind of like that. So Moses basically prays this prayer, right? Saying, look, if these guys just die a natural death, so be it. But if something happens that has never happened, and he doesn't just say if something, he says what that something will be. He says if the earth opens up and these guys, they just go down into the pit, then we'll know. So apparently this has never happened before, because he says if Yahuwah creates something new and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up. So apparently this has never happened before. Maybe this is the first time. I don't even know if it's ever happened since.
I think it's interesting that another passage says, Yahweh says, "I don't do anything except I tell my prophets first."
Good point.
So this wasn't an off-the-cuff
Right.
comment.
Yeah.
He was a prophet. He knew that that's what would happen, and he was telling them specifically.
Yeah. That's a good point. So why don't we continue reading 31 through... Well, let's read 31 through 35.
To pass, as he had made an end of the speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder and was under them, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses and all the men that appertained unto Korah, and all their goods. And they and all the apprehended them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. 35? Did you say?
Yeah.
And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up also." And there came out a fire from the Lord and consumed the 250 men and offered incense.
So the earth did open up, and I mean, what do you think about? I mean, just everything, their whole families and everything they own. I mean, it says the little ones. Lisa?
This doesn't really have anything to do with this in particular in the Bible, but I don't know if anybody has noticed all the different sinkholes that are happening all over the world. Just food for thought.
Yeah.
I noticed this time for the first time that they fled at the cry of them. In other words,
Had to be
if
pretty
you
horrific.
heard the little children and the people screaming,
Yeah.
that would make it more dramatic than just seeing them disappear.
I think it kind of shows that our personal actions, you know, if they're not for good, will have consequences not only on us, but, you know, our families, friends, you know, so there's always consequences for the bad that we do. And like Kurt was saying, this is one of those lessons that it's a tough lesson.
Another thing is that consequences for the bad affect everybody, but equally, the good things we do affect more than just ourselves.
Right.
Families we ought to dwell more on that.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of the sinner. It gets carried down like 3 or 4 generations, but for righteousness, it's for like 1,000 generations. So that's kind of like to your point, Ralphie.
No, it's interesting because Moses kind of warned everyone else around them, but this is talking that when they saw that happen to them, they were real close.
Yeah.
You know, so they didn't kind of take the warning. So maybe that's something for us. Make sure you don't get caught up into something that's of that same nature against the Most High and anything, because then you could be sucked right into it and part of the whole issue, especially if you've been warned, you know.
Did you have a comment, Donnie?
Bad company corrupts good morals.
What's that?
That's true. Bad company corrupts good morals.
Oh, there you
The
go.
story of my high school. Anyway, just I don't know really where I'm going with this, but in the beginning of chapter 16, it's talking about some of these guys that the 250, and it calls them men of renown.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, the earth swallows some of them. I'm sure they were part of the 250 that got.
Well, they didn't get swallowed up by the earth. They got consumed by fire. The 250.
Okay. Well, I guess I was just kind of focused on the men of renown. And I think I saw that somewhere back in Genesis 6. And I just wonder, like, I don't doubt that the Father will punish people for even gossip, which on my scale of sin is smaller. But it's kind of, maybe there's another aspect of who were these guys and did they mingle something?
Yeah.
You know, like why, you know, it just seems like just with the picking up of the sticks and getting swallowed up by earth, who are these guys?
Yeah.
And
Well, I think they were leaders at the very least, you know. But yeah, go ahead.
On that note of, I think many of us also think that would be one of the lesser sins, and yet it's one of the 7 deadly sins that he mentions that he hates the most is those that sow discord among the brethren.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things maybe is the heart of all this, or at least something to consider, is these men, they were given a duty to service the tabernacle, to have an order how the worship is to go about. And really, at the end of the day, they were saying, no, we're going to do it in the manner that we choose, on our schedule, how we think. We're going to dictate who is set apart, who's not, and
Right.
who is for who, because, so it's ultimately going against a particular order of separation that the Father set down, and they severely are punished for that.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, where did we leave off here? 36? 36 through 40? We got about 10 minutes. I think we can get to the end of the chapter here. Anybody want to read 36 through 40? Lisa?
And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto Eleazar, the son of Aharon the priest, that he take up the censers out of the burning, and scatter you the fire yonder, for they are hallowed. The censers of these sinners against their own souls, let them make them broad plates for a covering of the altar, for they offered them before Yahuwah, therefore they are hallowed, and they shall be a sign unto the children of Yasharel. And Eleazar the priest took the brazen censers, wherewith they that were burnt had offered, and they were made broad plates for a covering of the altar, to be a memorial unto the children of Yasharel, that no stranger, which is not of the seed of Aharon, come near to offer incense before Yahuwah, that he be not as Korah and as his company, as Yahuwah said to him by the hand of Moshe.
Thank you. So these censers, even though these guys used them, for not good intent, just the fact that they were making an offering with them made these censers set apart. So they were told to, hammer them down and use the gold. Any comments? Ralph?
I may be getting ahead of time, but all of a sudden it's starting getting crazy right now. I mean, because all that's going on. But it's interesting with the Zitziot, it was there to remind you about the commandments, and the same principle is working here, where this is on the altar, the first one, I believe, going in as a reminder to the whole congregation of this type of defiance against him,
Okay. So yeah, like you're saying, he wants to remind the people, don't be like Korah and company. So my Bible says Korah and his company did not work out well for them. So why don't we read 40? Ward has a comment.
I just want to make a comment on the censer, just because of some research I've been doing the last couple of months. It was mentioned, like, for instance, in the Catholic religion, they use the censer, and it's frequently a spherical. The bottom half is spherical, and you put something in the center, like incense, that's burning. And then there's a top that goes on it. It can be either semi-spherical or cone-shaped, and it's got perforations in it, so the smoke comes out, and then they swing it. Well, these are used all over the world in cultures, and it goes way back in history. So it's a very ancient usage of these things. And it appears for most cultures that the censer is representing a sign in the heaven, which represents the power, strength, and judgment of Yahweh. And so what they're representing is a comet. The smoke coming out is the tail of the comet. The shape of the censer is the shape of a comet, and they're moving it because the comet moves through the heavens. So they have it on a chain and they're moving it. So that's the ancient kind of roots of what for many cultures, what that represented.
That's interesting.
I'm bringing it up because we've been kind of talking about some of the judgments like at Tanis and these other places where these judgments are coming in the form of comets.
Right. Kurt, does that answer your question? Okay.
So that does help a lot. And then this question comes from one of our online viewers with whom I'm engaged, by the way. She said, thank you. She asked, is it wrong for us to burn incense?
A good question. I don't burn incense, but I don't have a problem with it.
Well, the incense altar in the tabernacle was a representative of their prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And so this could tie into all the rest of the
Right.
situation. Perhaps their prayers weren't being accepted by the Lord. That's
So
why.
the incense is a certain mixture, and so it's the mixture of how that incense is made was not to be duplicated. Doesn't mean you can't burn a different type of incense. It's made of a different mixture, but the particular portions that Abba had designated that cannot be burned anywhere else.
I don't suppose people were burning incense in their individual tents then, were they? Or maybe, I don't know.
So the composition then of the incense are
Well,
critical?
Mark was saying is there's a special mixture that they use for the incense in the tabernacle. And I think that special mixture you weren't supposed to use on an individual basis.
Yeah, it's just like the anointing oil.
Yeah.
It had a certain mixture, and so these two things were specifically Abba chose what things he wanted combined, and it was holy, and it was only to be used for that purpose.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Okay, we might have time just to read to the end and not talk about it. If anybody wants to read where we have 41.
The next day, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moshe and Aharon. You have killed Yahuwah's people, they said. But when the assembly gathered in opposition to Moshe and Aharon and turned towards the tent of meeting, suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of Yahuwah appeared. Then Moshe and Aharon went to the front of the tent of the meeting, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, get away from this assembly, so I can put an end to them at once. And they fell face down. Then Moshe said to Aharon, take your censer and put incense in it along with burning coals from the altar, and hurry to the assembly to make atonement for them. Wrath has come out from Yahuwah. The plague has started. So Aharon did as Moshe said and ran into the midst of the assembly, and the plague had already started among the people. But Aharon offered the incense and made atonement for them. He stood between the living and the dead, and the plague stopped. But 14,700 people died from the plague, in addition to those that had died because of Korach. Then Aharon returned to Moshe at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and the plague had stopped. For the plague had stopped.
Okay. So we're just, we could save that discussion for next week. We're just right about out of time. And just want to thank you guys for all your comments. Helps me out greatly. And thanks, Mark, Bud. And I want to say hello to Deb and Deborah, Dan and Renee. Thank you guys. And so let's pray, and then we can close. Father, just thank you so much for your word. Thank you for this time we had together. And we're so grateful to you that you lead. And Father, we don't want to be like these people. We don't want to be like Korah and company, Father. And just help us to always remember and and to look at our tzitzis and just to remember and that we need to always guard your commands and always be in the Word, learning more. And we thank you so much in Yahushua's name. Amen. Thank you very much.